Hi, my name is Deb Johnston, and welcome to Women Reinventing Midlife TV, where we aim to inspire women over 50 to thrive in a meaningful life that you deeply desire and deserve. Here you're going to hear real life stories from women over 50 to inspire you to reinvent any aspect of your life, together with tips and content around mindset, wellness, and style to guide you to build confidence and vitality in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And today I have a fantastic story to share with you because I am joined by the gorgeous Lisa Battalia. Lisa is an attorney and an author. She worked as the lead Title IX attorney for the US Department of Education's Office of the General Counsel for many years before taking time off to raise her two kids. She's now working with a consortium of professional STEM societies to help them advance a more inclusive and equitable culture and climate for women in the sciences. It sounds fascinating. And Lisa recently made a bold change in her life to move cross-country and start a new life on Whidbey Island, Washington. And she's also written and published 3 novels and many short stories, and just recently published 2 of them. And they are a 2-book series called A Midlife Romance. And that sounds absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to get my copy. Lisa, welcome, 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 welcome. I'm so
Thank
glad you've been able to
so
join
nice to be here with you.
I'm so glad you've joined it.
We see each other in other contexts. This is a nice one-on-one. This is very nice.
It is. And I know that I asked you to do this last year, and I'm so glad that I've actually got around to organizing it. So you have a fantastic story to share. You have been through huge transitions, not just one. There's been a few of them, and you're out the other side and thriving, I might add. You know, getting yourself out there, writing books, it really puts you out there.
It does.
So, yeah, I really want to congratulate you on that. That's a fantastic achievement.
Thank you.
So before we get into that, I'd love you to share your story with our audience because it's incredibly inspiring, and I know that it could help so many women watching right now.
Okay. I don't always think of it as an inspiring story, but I appreciate that. When I was thinking about how I would start my story, I think I often think it starts the day that my now ex-husband walked out of a 20-year marriage. And it was an utter shock. We celebrated the night before. We were out at a bat mitzvah for one of his law partner's children, and danced and held hands. And the next morning he woke up and he said, I've seen an attorney, I've rented a house, I'm moving out today, and we need to tell our kids. And, you know, it was a blow to the gut and the beginning of some really difficult days and months and even years, you know, really. So that's often how I think of that story. But then I realized really the story of my midlife transition and the confusion and the questions and the discomfort really started probably a couple years before. And I had a major depressive episode, and it also was a shock. Like I woke up one day and I had to get to the Cub Scout meeting that night and a bunch of things to do. And I just couldn't imagine how I was going to get through the day. And I did see a psychiatrist who helped me understand that, you know, even though it felt like a sudden thing, clearly it was deeper issues that had been fulminating for a long time. And, you know, these will all sound familiar to you, Deb, and to your listeners. You know, I had lost sight of myself. I had lost myself. I had lost sight of my values. I had lost sight of thinking that my needs mattered in any equation. I had basically thought that I didn't have any needs except to take care of my family. And I devoted myself to that. And there was, obviously a lot missing in what that meant and in my marriage and in the type of family we were creating. And So there was all these issues. And I'd like to say that I worked on them. But really, you know, it was really your HERS rediscovery program that really got me thinking about these things. And that was 10 years after the fact.
Yeah. Wow.
10 years before then, I was, 48, suddenly divorced, hadn't worked in 10 years, made that mistake that women make. I mean, I had worked, I had earned money, I'd taken care of things, but suddenly, for the past 10 years, my spouse had been in charge of finances and investments and all of the important spending decisions on mortgages and cars. His company had our health insurance. I saw an attorney, I obviously had a divorce attorney, and she would listen to my fears and kind of it was like a joke. She'd say, oh, so many of my clients worry that they're going to eat cat food in old age. And it was a story that was meant to make me feel silly and don't worry, I'm going to help you and protect you. And actually all I could think about was, eating cat food in old age. So that's all I could think about. And then I had these two children who I devoted my life to, who had some real struggles even before we got divorced. They, both of my kids have very serious ADHD and diagnosed. My daughter has really severe dyslexia. School, such a challenge for her. My son just hated school. Divorce sucks for kids. And so my son started acting out, and before long, he was basically skipping school every day and getting high downtown. And that started a journey of addiction and treatment, and, a very difficult journey there. And then I realized I also at the time felt very shunned, which sounds funny because I think divorce, is pretty commonplace. But in the world I lived in, I really felt shunned. I was just excluded from the couples world. I felt really excluded from school activities, neighbors. I felt like we're talking. Maybe it was the divorce. Maybe it was that my son was, a bad influence in the neighborhood, even though all the other kids were doing stuff. And anyway, that's where I found myself, just, very alone and isolated, and just so many fires that felt like they needed to be put out. And I didn't really have time to think about, my life and making my life move forward. So I want to fast forward 10 years because that's when I started to do this work. And in Deb's fantastic HERS discovery classes, we spend a lot of time with your help, like kind of looking back to look forward, right? So we spend this time looking back at what were our accomplishments, what are our interests, what really what has brought us joy. And my aha moment, this 10-year later aha moment, was you asked those questions, and I realized that my first instinct was to say, well, that was a shit show of a decade.
Which is normal.
Right? What a black hole. Nothing happened. Nothing good happened. Nothing happened. I better get my ass moving, or, I'm going to run out of time, right? Just joking about this. And I learned enough at that point from class to sort of stop myself and say, and realize that was like this knee-jerk reaction that I think so many women have and so many women do, which is diminish our strengths, undermine our achievements, disregard our joys, just sort of. And so then I stopped and said, well, what, it was really, it really was like an aha moment, and stopping myself and saying, okay, what really happened the last 10 years? And once I did that, okay, I actually, with a lot of help, with help of great counselors, I got my son through to sobriety.
Yeah, wow.
With, which is, I thank God every day for that. With the help of these two wonderful women who only counsel women, I got my financial house kind of in order. With the help of some really great teachers, I got Caroline through high school. With the help of some old colleagues, I got a job again as an attorney. In my free time, I don't know where that was, but in my free time, I wrote these two novels. I there's other things. But in any event, and ultimately I moved, I really made this big, huge step and moved cross country to intentionally to a place where, caring and community and nature count way more than the things that counted where I was living, which were, did your kid get into an Ivy League school? And, how fancy is your newest car? And what was your latest career success? And those are really, really, important things. I learned to count on a few friends, like a few really good friends, our group, a few people to sort of remind myself that I am loved and I matter. And if I'm feeling low and that depression is rearing its head, I have to reach out to them right away.
I noticed that you said that the natural tendency, your natural tendency, and this is the same for lots of women, is natural tendency is to try and do it on your own. And I know that I'm built the same way. So it's interesting that where you started to gain momentum, you'd actually pulled in a team of people around you to do it.
Yeah, and that's not easy. That really,
that's right.
I'm sort of, when I left work, I think I really I considered my job of raising my family and caring for my family as that's my job. I mean, I'm supposed to do it as well as I've done any other job, and but do it alone, do it because I was doing it alone because my ex really was just not around. But really, you need this village, you need this team, you need people that have skills that you don't have.
Yeah.
One of the most important lessons in my son's treatment was, stand back, let us do our job for a little while, go away, stop being a trigger, stop, bringing all that family drama, just go away. So yeah, it is so true. And I say that really, I mean, as I was thinking about these things, that each of those accomplishments, it was with the help of, and sometimes asking for it, or sometimes it's offered, and just letting yourself say yes can be really hard too, right? That's that knee-jerk reaction. I'm fine. I can do this. Don't worry. It's true.
Yeah. It isn't it amazing? So what for you do you think would normally stop you accepting help or stop you asking for help? Let's say
it's so automatic.
Yeah.
It's just so I
think it's from watching our own mothers, maybe, or
so my mother has an interesting story. My mother was married at 18, had 6 children before she was like 26, and clearly was not happy being a housewife only. And she went back to college. She went back to law school. She became the mayor of our town for some time. She was the judge at some. I mean, she really opened up her life. But every single day, every single night, my dad had a gourmet dinner that she prepared for him. It was like, I'll do it all. I'll do all this stuff that I need to do for myself, but I'll pretend at home like it's not happening and nothing's changed, and we'll just go through the motions like we were doing. And I like, wow, that's interesting. That was an interesting lesson. You can have what you want, but only if it doesn't, rock the boat, and you pretty much hide that you have any needs of your own that you're attending to. So
wow.
I think that's probably part of that lesson.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yep. Go ahead.
No, continue what you're saying.
I'm cautious to, as I tick off these accomplishments, and they really are genuine accomplishments. And I did have to stop and sort of think and realize how much I'd accomplished. It's not like these were like carefree 10 years. I mean, in these same 10 years, I lost my father to old age. I lost my closest sibling to suicide. I worried many nights that my son's addiction, would kill him. I fell in love again and was heartbroken again. I, didn't learn that lesson so well. I made some bad decisions. So I don't want to leave the impression that, like I just sort of glided through 10 years of accomplishments. It was it was accomplishments despite some really hard things. And it's almost, maybe that's partly why it's hard to recognize them, and why you have to do that work to really stop and pat yourself on the back a little bit, to both because we should understand what we've done, but also to do that work that we did of figuring out, where does the joy and where does the genuine and good sense of accomplishment come? Because we've got this whole other life moving forward. We do sort of get through that dark decade of, I think everyone has like a pretty hard time there in middle age when you're maybe taking care of your parents and taking care of your kids and trying to do a job, and it's all crazy. And you need to take that time to think again, so you can move forward with some priorities.
So important. And I think, and I know absolutely you didn't glide through those 10 years, and that's what's inspirational about your story is, you worked your way through it. And you still had accomplishments, not, and I wouldn't say in spite of, I would say also maybe because of as well, that you went through. Yeah. And I love that you've actually taken some of that and you're actually working with it to start discussions and help other women start talking about what needs to be talked about. And, in your book, you've started a blog as well, haven't you, for this very thing?
I did, because again, I feel like it's a tough time. It's a very, I don't know. I guess I guess maybe I had assumed that things would get easier. It's funny. My daughter's 20 now and struggling, with who she wants to be. My next door neighbor is 40 and just quit the thing she's been doing for like the last 20 years and struggling with who she wants to be. And I'm 60. We were actually having a kind of laugh about this. You keep thinking it's going to get easier, and you never get done, right? You just never get done this work. For me, of like wanting to have a meaningful life means like there's always, you're kind of back to square one. Like, what does meaningful mean?
Yeah.
And that does change, but not the questions, and I need to ask them. And how do I go about doing that? And how do I measure success? That really changes a lot. And I think it's hard for me, and maybe it's hard for a lot of people to let go of, older ideas of success,
yes,
of a career, or how many books I sell, or and so I think it's a hard time, and I think the world has shifted so much. Like I often use the expression, I do feel like a dinosaur sometimes. Like I don't feel my age. I turned 60 this year. What does that mean? That sounded very old to me. I don't feel old, right?
I don't know.
But we live in a world, right? But we do live in a world like the social media, the fastness of this world. It sometimes feels like, oh my gosh, I don't understand. How many of us just shake our heads like, you look at these things on TikTok that your kids are looking at, you're like, what is this? Like, who came up with this idea? Why do you look at it anyway? I was trying to make a place as I was kind of doing this discovery and writing these books, feeling like, and it's funny because the blog is online, and so in a way it's a social media thing. But I do think if COVID's taught us one thing, right, it's that you can actually have genuine community online. When we have our meetings, we're in England, in Australia, in America. We're in different time zones, we're in different seasons, and yet we're all there together, genuinely there for each other. So I thought I had this idea for a blog of just not advice. I'm not an expert. There's a lot of advice blogs, but could we build a community where people could kind of share some of these struggles and joys, some of the good and bad of midlife, what's confusing, what's hard, what's successful. I'm really thinking of writing a post without violating my daughter's privacy of, what do you do when you have a kid who's 20 and doesn't see a clear track, and the usual track of college isn't for her. I feel like COVID has really disrupted many young people's lives, that some of us younger people at home. So trying to, just make a place that people could share and support each other and build a community around what can be very, tough and confusing and isolating times. And people often, because people are in major transitions, they're widowed or they're divorced or their kids are out of the house. I mean, these are big
transitions. Yeah.
That can leave you very disrupted. For some people it might be great, for some people it's incredibly lonely, but for everyone it's like a big change. And how do we work through these? I posted a post on I can't remember what it was about, but the woman commented that she's feeling like there's all these things she wants to do, and yet she's so busy at work, even though she's 62 and she doesn't see retirement in sight. And I'm like, I have exact opposite problem. Suddenly my work's slowing down and I got all this time. But we're both like, shit, like, now what do I do? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and this is the thing. And this is the thing, we talk about over 40, we talk about hitting 45, we talk about hitting 50 and think, oh, once that transition's over at 50, that's it. It's not. It keeps happening.
It keeps happening, right?
It keeps happening. So we need to really get to know ourselves, really, like you've talked about already, is doing that inner work. So, you can really get to see what it is that you do want to do.
Right. And who do you want to be? I mean, I laugh at myself and, a little shamefully that it wasn't until I was close to 60 that I started to ask myself what intellectually I think I've always known and understood, which is that, and I think my depression actually was a symptom of, if you don't live your life to consistent with some very core values about what you believe about what success is, the importance of family, how you want a family life, how you want to contribute to society, how whether it's important to give back, all these things, you're not going to feel, you're going to feel this disconnect that at its worst can wind up, with a severe major depression. And so, you have to, and before you can even live up to them, you have to know what they are.
Exactly.
Right. And I mean, I remember your first classes were terrifying. Honestly, I don't know if you could tell, they were terrifying. What do you mean, my values, my core values? I have no idea. And, and then the beauty is, as you do the work, you can make decisions consistent with them. And then you start at this base of confidence that, this will be okay. That, I don't care what anyone else thinks, because everyone else has different, and that's the other thing to learn. Everyone else has different core values. So some people may, think my core value of wanting to really tend to my garden is kind of a waste of time, or writing romance novels or whatever. But it doesn't matter if you really have that deep sense of what they are, and can then use them in decision making. And it's such a powerful thing. And I got all the way to 60 before I really thought about doing that work.
So many of us do, right? So many of us do. And also, our values can shift over the years as well.
True.
The problem is, I think, the problem what I've seen working, with a lot of women is that we tend to rely on our roles as our foundation. So, when the roles change, we lose our foundation. So, but what our real foundation is our core values. Once we know those, they're like the thing that steers the ship,
Right.
And
then, terrible transitions can become good transitions, right? So my divorce, it seemed like an earthquake. I mean, it seemed like the end of the world. It seemed like it was destroying everything I valued, but looking back, now that I have the benefit of hindsight, my ex was not a good person, and he was very, very controlling. And I was not having an authentic relationship with my children because I was parenting to his standards, his values, and it's just this divorce after some really shitty years. Now, my kids and I have just such a remarkably strong relationship. And I'm telling you, during the divorce and like in the years after the divorce, I kicked my son out of the house. I mean, things were bad. And it was partly because we were still working through that. And really our divorce was still our marriage and fighting and who was in charge and who's going to make these decisions. And now the kids have their relationship with their dad, and, you know, I'm supportive of that, but I don't get involved in that. And I just really concentrate on my relationship with these kids and how I want them to understand who I am, which I never even bothered with before, which has really shaped who they are. I mean, I can see them be like, huh, you know, oh, like wow, I feel like I know you now, Mom, and I like you, and that's like, there's nothing more beautiful, right, than to do that. And I don't know, without the divorce, I'm not sure we would have gotten there. Because I would have done all the work that I wound up having to do, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I was given the gift, you know, I never tell my ex this, but the gift of, you know, independence and needing to reinvent a life that was my life.
Yeah, and it has. It's really completely transformed your life, completely.
You know,
I love it. I love it, and to the point now that you're a published writer. And so, tell us a bit about your book. Tell us a bit about your book.
So it probably won't surprise people to hear that I wrote a book about midlife transition, right? It's called A Midlife Romance. And it's a 2-novel series, and it is a romance, which I know some people think are silly and some people secretly read but don't tell anybody. But the stuffy New York Times has a romance column once a month, so because people read this stuff, and I chose the genre, you know, in part because I wanted to sell a lot of books, and romance sell a lot of books, right? And then couldn't write that romance. I couldn't write what I thought would sell. I wound up writing something that I think skews the genre. The characters are in midlife. Most romance novels are about 20-somethings who have very unencumbered lives, very trivial problems, and you know, and this book is about characters in midlife. Their lives are complicated. Romance is complicated in midlife because you often, you know, you come together with someone who has their own midlife baggage and maybe kids and their own work and whatever. And so I tried to change up the genre, and by doing that, it felt like it really tells like a very rich emotional story with some depth. The other thing about them is they are very sexy.
Yeah.
there's sex in these books, and that was interesting. I mean, actually, I there's sex in them, I think, because sex is fun, but I think also it's important in midlife because in that busyness we've been talking about, I mean, what is the one thing that people often complain about getting lost in their lives is their sex lives, right?
Yep.
And then ultimately I was exploring, I decided to explore this idea that rekindling passion could be a means of transformation. And there's lots of ways that we transform ourselves, but this was something I wanted to explore, that you know, rekindling that part of your life would actually result in changes to your self-awareness and your self-esteem and your confidence. And the characters kind of go through that transformation with, you know, sex as the motivator, or sexual awakening as the motivator, but so much more, you know, is so much more comes out of it. And it was just a challenge. And then there's just like, I like to challenge myself. A core value I've come to realize about myself. I hate being out of my comfort zone, and yet my comfort zone kind of sucks, right? I mean, my comfort zone is where I get depressed because I'm not challenging myself. I'm not trying something new. I'm not learning. I don't like those things, even though that's comfortable. It's easy. It's not my joy. It's not my place of joy. And so it was a challenge. I wanted to try to write sex that was like authentic, and it's explicit, but without being like cliche. And how do you know, like it's hard, you know, and there's the characters have a long distance relationship. So when they get together, it's kind of the tension of sort of their lives apart, which often are very different, and then they come together and they have this very passionate life, and can they keep those apart? Can they bring those together? And so there's a fair amount of sex in the book, and as because of these weekends together, and how do you write it so it doesn't get the same old thing, and try to play with some ideas of how would someone who's feeling very insecure about their body and their life and midlife, how might they experiment with sex as a way of kind of challenging some of those limiting beliefs about what they're capable of, how courageous they are, so those themes of experimenting and building confidence and being courageous that wind up impacting and improving the characters' lives in so many other ways. They start with this sort of sexual relationship.
I love it. It sounds fantastic, because it is an aspect of life that can get lost in this phase of life. And yeah, I love what you're saying, because sex actually opens the heart as well.
Right.
Yeah, opens the heart, which is where true transformation comes from the heart. I love that, because we can get a lot of limiting beliefs around sex about the way we look, because our bodies really change.
Right?
Yeah, really change. I love it. It sounds fantastic.
And I also, part of the exploration too is that, again, the world has changed so much. I was watching a show last night with a darling show called Extraordinary, with young Irish young adults, and sex has become so perfunctory. Like it's like they just, it's a world where people just seem to not think of it at all, and I'm not sure that's right. And also, because I don't, that doesn't engage the heart, and also that's not the world I think a lot of people in midlife grew up in. We grew up with our, just one generation before, people didn't have sex before marriage. My parents didn't have sex before marriage, right? So we've gone from that through us to this incredibly, fairly promiscuous world. And where do people in midlife, we hear those, we can get on Tinder. Does that mean we should go out and have sex with the guy we meet in the bar? Like that, like where does all that fit in as you're in this transformation, perhaps single, perhaps having to date again? Like, where does that fit in?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's a whole other ball game, isn't it? The online dating world. It's yeah, it is a whole other ball game, and so many women. Well, you in particular. How many years married? It's
20 years.
You have to learn how to date again. It's totally new
in a very new world. In a very new world. So
yeah, that's right. Wow. Lisa, where can people contact you or get a hold of a copy of one of your books? Where can they do that?
So very easy to reach me at Lisa Battalia at gmail.com. No punctuation, no dots or anything, just Lisa Battalia at gmail.com. The books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the pretty much the usual places. The quickest way is to look up Awake Lisa Battalia, and it comes right up. I've discovered that, because it's a little complicated, because it's a midlife romance, and then each book has a title. The first one's Awake, and the second one's Second Chances. I also have a webpage, lisabattalia.com.
Okay. Cool.
And my blog is ourmidlifestories.blog. And
stories.blog.
Love people to visit that and just share, comment on other people's comments. It would really be, I think, a wonderful community if we could build it.
Yeah, I've actually been on there, and you do write about some really great topics, and invite comments, which is lovely. I really love what you're doing with the blog. So you can access those links that Lisa's just shared with you in the description notes underneath this video. So I'm going to place the live links under there so that you can connect with Lisa and either get a copy of one of her books or join her blog or connect with her in person.
Love to hear from people.
Yeah, Lisa, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I know that it's a challenging story, but it's also a really incredibly inspirational one, as the way you've come through it and how you've shared your lessons. And I know that it's going to help a lot of ladies out there watching right now. Before we finish, I'd love to ask you a question that I always ask, and that is, if you imagine that there is a woman out there who's going through transition and she's on the verge of reinvention, what is the advice that you would like to give her right now?
It's interesting. I wrote a letter to my 10-year younger self, and it was an interesting exercise. And the first thing I told myself, and I would tell this woman, is don't forget to breathe. You know, breathe and really breathe. And that is something that is genuinely inspired me as I've dealt with depression and dealt with these challenges and learned self-care and the importance of self-care, which I think as a Catholic girl growing up, I'm like, taking care of myself is just not, it's actually like sinful, like, you know, but no, it really is so important. And I remember just, you know, your breath, you always have it with you. It's always there. And it's quite remarkable. And Deb, you've done some really cool exercises with us. It's really remarkable and it's really powerful. So don't forget to breathe deep and strong. And don't forget to remind yourself, and this is something I probably didn't do enough of, like, it's going to be okay. And something I wish I had told myself and reminding myself, I'm smart, I'm confident, I'm kind, I'm caring. And those things go a really long way to create a wonderful community for yourself and really create like a meaningful life. And it doesn't have to be so hard. It doesn't have to be so hard. We make things very hard sometimes.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
Unnecessarily hard.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you, Lisa.
And take Deb's class. I mean, hers. I mean, can I give that blog? I mean, it is a transformational experience, and you hold our hands through it, and you bring us together in community, and you give us such valuable help. And I'm forever grateful. Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I got to share your journey as well. And
I appreciate you giving me this chance. It's really special.
Thank you. I am so glad that you accepted the opportunity to come on, because I know that, you know, even that takes courage to get on camera.
It does, yes.
A lot of courage. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Lisa. It's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you and talking about you. It's been really wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Deb.
And thank you everyone for joining us. I trust that you've gained so much from this incredible conversation, so many insights, so many learnings that can help you through your transition. Remember, if you got a lot from this video, remember to give us a like and share it with your friends. And we'd love to get comments as well to see how this has helped you, or if you have any questions. And if you want to see more videos like this one, remember to subscribe to this channel and click the bell for notifications so that you are notified as soon as the next one comes out. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. And I'll look forward to connecting with you next time. Lots of love. Bye-bye.